What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be learning how to solve equations by multiplying and dividing. And what that essentially means is when given an equation with a certain variable, whatever letter it may be, we want to find the value of that variable by using certain operations to isolate it or leave it by itself on one side of the equation. And today we'll specifically be learning how to do that by using the operations of multiplication and division. We'll be using multiplication and division to isolate the variable, leave it by itself on one side of the equation, to then find the value it's equal to. So in today's lesson, I'm going to go over 5 examples where I'll be using multiplication and division operations to solve for the variable. And remember, if you want to try the examples on your own, feel free to pause the video and have at it. So let's start today's lesson by going over example number 1 first. And here we see it. X over 6 equals 4. That is our first equation given to us, and we want to find what the value of the x variable is. Well, if we take a closer look at this, we see that we have x over 6 equals 4. X over 6 is essentially the same thing as 1/6 times x. And think about it. Let's say, for example, x equals 2. So 1/6 times 2 is 2/6. And then if you substitute in 2 for x, you also have 2/6. So x over 6 is the same thing as 1/6 times x. So then we can rewrite this as 1/6 times x equals 4. Now we want to get rid of this 1/6. And how do we do that? Well, what times 1/6 equals 1? 6. We can get rid of this 1/6 by multiplying both sides by 6. And you can see that later on because 1/6 times 6 equals 1. So then we'd have 1x equals 4 times 6, which is 24. And remember, 1x is the same thing as x. So then we just have x equals 24, which would be our answer. But you don't always have to rewrite, for example, in this case, x over 6 is 1/6x. You can just look at what it's being divided by. You can look at the denominator. And you should notice immediately in these type of problems that if you multiply both sides of this equation, in this example, by 6, then these two 6's do cancel out. And then you get x on the left side equals whatever's on the right side, which is 4 times 6, which is 24. So don't rewrite it like this all of the time. Just look at the denominator and then realize what number you have to multiply it by to get an isolated x on the left side of your equation. So now let's move on to example number 2. And here we see it, x over 9 equals 6. Now remember, we don't have to rewrite x over 9 as 1/9 times x. We can just notice that 9 is a number on the denominator. So if we multiply both sides by 9, then these two will cancel out. And then we get x equals whatever is on the right, which is 6 times 9, which is 54. So that's how, in fact, you use the multiplication operation to solve for the value of the x variable. You have to use it to cancel out whatever x being divided by, and then you'll get what x is equal to. So now that we've learned how to use the multiplication operation to solve for x in equations, let's move on to how to use the division operation. And we can start by looking at example number 3, which is right here, which is 7x equals 42. Now, in the last two examples, x was being divided by a certain number, but now it's being multiplied by a certain number. So instead of multiplying like in the last two cases, now we want to divide. So if we look this closely, 7x divided by what number is x? Well, it's just 7. Because if you divide 7x by 7, since these two are the same number, 7x for the 7 and 7, these do cancel out. And then you're left with x isolated on the left side, and then 42 divided by 7 is 6, and then you get x equals 6, which is your answer. So all you want to do is use division to get rid of the number that the x is being multiplied by, to isolate it, and then set it equal to whatever value is equal to. And then as you see for number 4, we want to do the same thing. So if we look at the left side, we see 4x. Well, all we have to do is divide both sides by 4. These two do cancel out because they are the same number. So we'll leave it with x equals 108 divided by 4, which is 27. So our answer is x equals 27. So that is how you in fact use a division operation to isolate x and find its value. So now that you guys have learned, hopefully, how to use those two operations, let's move on to example number 5, which might be a little bit tricky because it involves more than one operations. And here we have it, 5r over 6 minus 3 equals 7. And if you guys want to try this on your own, feel free to. And remember, the order does matter. Alright, well, let me explain it to you guys. So as I've said, the order does matter. So what you do want to do is use the operations in a certain order. So for example, some of you might be thinking to multiply both sides by 6 first, but that would not be the right thing to do, because when you multiply both sides by 6, you also multiply this negative 3 by 6, which then makes it a little bit more complicated. So the first step we should do is just to use the addition or subtraction operation. In this case, it's the addition operation. So we can add 3 to both sides. These 3's cancel, and then we're left with 5r over 6 equals 10. So now we see that our 5r, or our r variable, is being divided by a 6. So let's just get rid of that 6 by using the multiplication operation. We multiply both sides by 6. These two cancel out, and then we're left with 5r equals 60. And finally, to solve for the value of r, we can use our division operation, where we divide both sides by 5, so these two cancel out, and then we're left with r equals 12. So that was a little trickier problem for you guys, but hopefully you got it. There is a certain order in how you do use the operations in these type of problems. And once again, if you guys aren't certain about your answer or just want to make sure it's right, you can always double check by substituting in the answer you got back into your equation and then solving it or simplifying it to make sure it is equal to this number. So that is, in fact, how you do use the multiplication and division operations to solve for x in certain equations. Hopefully you guys learned how to use these two operations, and if you did, consider subbing to the channel, and also make sure to check out our playlist on math. Thank you for watching.